Hello, my name is Jeffrey Rubenstein, and this is the fourth episode of Sans Apologia, a podcast to discuss a variety of topics with which I can have a productive discussion. I'll back it up with some links and some resources on the website. You can go over there at jeffreybrubenstein.com. Today I'll be talking with Zev Padway from Tzfat, Israel, which is in the northern part of the country, just above the Sea of Galilee. Zev and I don't really know each other. We have a friend in common, but the fact that he is currently in Israel, I am hosting here from Tampa, Florida. I thought that that would make an interesting conversation in itself and allow me to get the opportunity to ask Zev some questions. As everyone knows, the situation in Israel right now is very serious. After the Hamas attacks on October 7th, Israel has responded with a heavy military response and a current occupation of Gaza, leading to thousands of people killed, both Israeli and Palestinian. So, Zev, again, I thank you, and I have a few questions. But first, I wanted to know how you and your family are doing. In a country as small as Israel, I imagine an attack such as occurred on October 7th would affect nearly every citizen in one way or another. So just briefly, how are you and your family doing?
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me on. I think this is actually my first podcast that I've
congratulations.
Been on. So, yes, thank you. Considering everything, and now that the tragedy happened on October 7th, and we're already in April now, so there's the ability of the human condition to acclimate to anything. So we're trying to acclimate with this ongoing horrific struggle that's going on, but in general, we're trying to do day by day. We're trying to I have 4 children that they're in school, and they're just trying to make it normal for them because they're young and whatnot. And in the meantime, I spend most of my time, I own a restaurant in the city of Tzfat, in the old city of Tzfat, that is usually bustling with tourists, especially this time of year. Now it's empty. But I've been spending my time making food for both soldiers and also families that are affected, as well as just the typical or atypical single mothers, elderly, families in need that I've been doing for years, regardless of the situation.
This is a community program?
It's not a community program. It's just, the name of my restaurant is Elements Cafe, and I like cooking food and I like feeding people. So it's just something that I do to stay busy, because I find that if I'm not engaged in some kind of activity that's helping others, then it's very easy to get depressed and just to watch the news all the time and, spend too much time in my head. So if I stay busy, it helps me kind of get out of the situation.
Sure. And that sounds like a busy activity to be doing, particularly right now. Does those activities take you all over the country, or mostly
it's mostly in the north?
And I think the food that you are delivering is all vegan. Is it all gluten-free?
It's all vegan. It's gluten-free by request. Celiac soldiers, vegan, vegetarian soldiers, or soldiers that have certain food sensitivities. There's a lot of organizations that are feeding a lot of people, and most of the organizations were doing like barbecues and meat and, stuff that soldiers want to eat or whatever, because I am making burritos, it's beans, rice, tortillas. My money lasts a lot longer, so now I'm basically just feeding everyone who needs it.
Oh, excellent.
So I kind of increased my output.
That sounds great. That might lead into our first tough question of the day.
Yes, let's hear it.
All right. Well, then, with that in mind, and that you are in the business of providing food to people who need it, what is your opinion of the IDF strike on the World Central Kitchen in Gaza?
Well, first of all, I'll be honest that especially in the last few months, my awareness, my attention to the news is not what it was as it was in the beginning. What I do, from what little I've seen, unless there's something that I haven't seen that's proven different, was that it was an accident. It was not intentional. There's no advantage to doing a strike specifically toward, anyone that's bringing aid. And that it was a terrible, terrible tragedy that happened, which sadly happens in war, not in war. I know that in general, the IDF has been more than, they go out of their way to protect the civilians as much as possible and to target the terrorists. I don't think there was any intention in trying to, eliminate aid workers.
Sure. Well, without getting into the weeds of that, there are counter arguments, as I'm sure you would imagine. There are lots of people speculating and providing possible reasons or motives why the IDF would do something like that. I'm not that knowledgeable about that part of it either. I am just trying to understand the situation from my own sort of remote perspective. You did say you're not staying on top of the most recent events as much as you were maybe initially. But as an Israeli citizen, do you have a general view of the current military operations in Gaza? Are you aware that there's a specific goal in mind?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to go back a little bit. I don't have any... As we're doing this podcast, I'm in my cafe right now and organizing and cleaning, and I'm actually covered in water from washing dishes. So I don't have talking points in front of me or notes in front of me and whatnot.
Sure.
But I could say that, and maybe the facts better in this case. But what was it, 2007, 2005, something like that. It's a quick Google search, but basically, I'd like to start there because I think it's really important to understand what happened then. Sure. First of all, you have this gorgeous beachfront property. The Gaza Strip is one of the most beautiful places in Israel, right? And there were there were thousands, hundreds of thousands of Israelis living there, who had built beautiful greenhouses and farms and just amazing, really like from scratch, had built their homes and whatnot. And then this idea of land for peace came into play that, okay, listen, let's give this property to the Palestinian people. And it created a civil war in Israel because here we are that you have individuals that this is their homes, this is their livelihood, this is where they've been living, this is where they raise their children. And all of a sudden they're given, okay, you have 30 days to abandon and to leave this area. And I remember watching, and also talking to friends of mine who lived there and whatnot, where they were physically dragged out. People literally chained themselves to their homes, and it was so intense and heartbreaking because the soldiers and the police that were ordered to take people out, they were often doing it to their own family members and or relatives and friends, that they were dragged out and forced to leave their land in this idea of land for peace, right? So, and there's plenty of YouTube videos one could watch of showing like the intensity of this when the people were dragged out. What happened then is literally within weeks of this, after the deadline, Hamas came in with bulldozers, destroyed all the greenhouses, tore down everything that was built, and started building rocket launchers. And it was very shortly after that they started then firing rockets into Israel. And then, as we now know, literally billions of dollars was spent developing this incredible tunnel system underneath, where this is billions of dollars that was given in aid from many different organizations.
Yeah, worth noting, I think we're talking about Iranian organizations.
Not just
these
Iranian.
Funds are coming
also from America.
So organizations within the United States sending funds to Hamas.
Well, they were sending it not specifically to Hamas. They were sending it to
other charity organizations. There's a famous case here of a professor here in Tampa who got wrapped up into that.
So you have here we're trying to make land for peace. We're giving the land, and then it's immediately used to try to kill us. You know, there's the famous saying that, like, if they would put their guns down and stop trying to kill us, right, then there would be peace. If we put down our guns, they would just kill us. There's no desire for peace on the side of Hamas. They want to annihilate us. That's the definition of genocide. They want to kill us. Now, what is happening in Gaza is horrific for the Palestinian people. And you know, there's plenty of videos, probably not enough because of people's fear of life, where the Palestinians are cussing out Hamas and saying, we just want to live our lives. Why are you doing this?
Right.
It's
that
horrific,
does permeate a bit. We get some of that, but you're right. You don't see a lot of it.
And rightly so, because they don't want their families to be killed, you know?
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. Listen,
I appreciate the backdrop that you just described. There is a long way from that to where we are today, and that does kind of bring us right back to, granted, the historical situation in Israel is incredibly complex and tragic for Israelis, for Palestinians. Now, there's a disconnect between that reality and the wholesale demolishing of residential areas. We don't have to go through the litany of tragedy that's taking place there, but there's an overwhelming response that I don't think a lot of people can kind of wrap their heads around.
I agree. And the thing is that it didn't start on October 7th. October 7th was a nightmare. But, you know, obviously this has been going on for quite some time. There is a great book I really highly recommend to everyone to read. That's called Catch the Jew by Tuvia Tenenbaum. Catch the Jew. Unbelievable book. And basically he is this journalist, writer who grew up in Israel and left at an early age because he had no desire to be religious, no desire to live in Israel. He ended up in Manhattan in the Lower East Side. He ended up in Germany. He writes for a German newspaper. He speaks German. He speaks Arabic. He speaks Yiddish. He speaks English, everything. His publishers convinced him to come here. And when he came here, he lied to everyone about who he is, but not what he's doing. He's told everyone, I'm writing a book about Israel or Palestine. And depending on who he was with, if he was with an Arab, he would say, I'm a Muslim from Germany, and he would speak Arabic. So he ended up becoming best friends with the head security of Yasser Arafat and all these different people. And, you know, one example is he goes on and he records everything. He goes on a tour with these Italian students. And
what year are we talking about? Like, what time period is this?
This is in the last 10 years.
Okay.
He goes on a little tour with these Italian students. And the tour guide is showing this little hut. He goes, this is where since the occupation, my family's basically homeless. We live in this little hut over here in this village. The Israelis, they destroyed our land and took over everything, blah, 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 blah. After the end of the tour, he goes up to the tour guide and he starts speaking to him in Arabic. He goes, how do you know? He goes, I'm a Muslim. I live in Germany. And, I want to talk about how terrible it is. Oh, wow, you must come to dinner and meet my family. He says, no, but I don't want to overstep. You don't seem like you have a lot. Oh, no, 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 no. Where are you staying? I'll have a car sent for you. You'll come to my real home. And he ends up going to the guy's house. He lives in this mansion. And he's like, yes, the occupation has actually been very good for us. And there's all these stories. And the guy, before he had no agenda. He was just doing the thing where and he also speaks bad about rabbis. He speaks bad about everyone. He tells the truth of what's going on. But he undercovers that so much of the anti-Semitism and stuff is propaganda that's being pushed by the EU, sends millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to different organizations to promote this hatred and these kind of things. Anyway,
don't you? In some of my discussions with people from the area, whether Arabic, Muslim, Jewish, Israeli, whoever they may be, there is this kind of almost understanding that there's a mutual necessity between the extremes on both sides, that they need each other. To some extent, Likud justifies Hamas and Hamas justifies Likud. So do you think that there is some kind of collusion behind the scenes that kind of justifies their mutual existence? Like, that's the dirty secret behind the scenes, is Hamas needs Likud and Likud needs Hamas. Is there any accuracy to that?
I don't know. I mean, I who knows? That's going into conspiracy theories beyond my range. All I know is that, for example, in Tzfat, where I live, right in the center of town, okay, and this is, a city of 40,000 people, which is, I would say, 99% Jewish Israeli, like not just Israeli, but Jewish Israeli. In the middle of the town is the Tzfat College. The Tzfat College is, I think, 70% Arab. Okay, This is right downtown middle spot, 70% Arab, no problems, no issues. There's an issue now in the last year because they want to build a big dormitory right on in this one area that's right on the main street, which would be a nightmare for traffic. The traffic in the park, because there's only one street that goes through, a one-way street that goes through the middle of town. And to have a dormitory right there would be a nightmare, right? But the Tzfat College has been here for, I don't know, 20 years, 30 years, something like that. That's number one. All the pharmacies in the city are, I think, Arab-owned, Arab-run. The produce that I buy from Arabs. There's a shuk, a marketplace every week that has a large amount of Arabs, Muslims, Druzi that people buy from, right? Many of the doctors, the nurses are Arab, are Muslim. If you would ask any Israeli Arab if they want to, live, go to Jordan or go to Syria or go to any of the other places, no, they vote, they live as well as any, they go through the same things that we do, right?
Right, and
they have the same opportunities.
There's a great deal of cooperation and community and things like that. I think one of the horrors of October 7th that I read about was that kibbutzim or communities or organizations that were cooperative between Jews and Arabs were actually targeted specifically because of that reason. I don't know if you know much about that or if there's validity to that, but it seems like that would have been a target, almost a political target,
for sure,
to destroy the cooperation.
Many of the places that were attacked had perfectly good relations with their neighbors.
Specifically for that reason, because they were symbolic of cooperation.
I mean, I would say it's that and the convenience that they're on the border. They're right there. It's not, not that they wouldn't have just as easily, gone to Tel Aviv or gone to Mea Shearim or other places where there isn't any cooperation if they had the access. Yeah. I mean, these monsters that committed these, heinous acts would have, who knows? The people that actually did it probably had very little to do with the planning of any of it.
Sure. Right. That's often the case.
Right. The leaders are in Qatar with living in mansions,
Right.
Like where this is the thing. It's like, where is the outrage of how little the Palestinian people in the West Bank, in Gaza, are given from their leaders who have billions of dollars living like kings, you know? And that the money that's coming in for them for aid is taken and used to build tunnels and used to buy weapons while the people are starving. And I mean, look, and you may say, I don't know how you'll say as far as the analogy goes, the same guy, that Tuvia Tenenbaum, he also wrote a book about being in America, and he was in Chicago, and he went to I don't know if it was a Reform or Reconstructionist synagogue, and they were doing this was before this, you know, within the last 10 years, and they were doing a pro-Palestinian event, right, and against the occupation and whatnot. So he asked him, he goes, I'm trying to understand, why do you guys care what's happening, you know, thousands of miles on the other side of the planet when, you know, 20 blocks down the road, you have people living in third world conditions here in Chicago, people who can't eat, people who are killing each other, people who are starving, living in the worst possible conditions. So it's the same kind of thing. Like, you know, you have all the billionaires and the millionaires everywhere, and yet you have people who are living in such squalor.
Because for the same reason, the squalor is politically expedient. It keeps those politicians in power because they are able to perpetuate the idea that they're going to be able to be the ones that fix the problem or protect the people. And so there's a value to it, a commodity to doing that. I mean, you preempted one of my questions already, which was basically, what is something you think is not discussed enough that should be in regards to the current crisis facing Israel? You are kind of basically explaining that right now. Is there anything you want to add to that? Something that you don't think is discussed enough but should be?
Well, I mean, look, even though I am Israeli, I'm also an American. I made Aliyah. I moved to Israel and became a dual citizen.
From where, just out of curiosity, in the United States?
I made Aliyah from Berkeley, California.
Okay.
Originally, I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. I lived in Denver. I lived in different places in Florida. I've been all over America. New York, the works. Interestingly enough, after October 7th happened, both my parents are deceased. My wife's parents are from Boston. And immediately they said, get on a plane, we're flying you back. And I was like, what, are you kidding me? I'm not going to America. I'm scared to go to America. He laughed, but I really am fearful to go. And we just had the holiday of Purim. And I had the idea that maybe I'm going to go to New York for Purim with my oldest son, who's 10, right? Now, I have a beard. I have, the payas, the side locks, right? And so does my son. And the thought of going, I really was, and again, who knows? It's like, Americans, when they're looking at the media, they think of Israel as this war zone and that it's terrible. And then you meet everyone who comes here and they're like, wow, it's fantastic here. We feel safe. We feel, no problem. So maybe it's like that in America, that all the anti-Semitism that I see in the media of, Jews being attacked and whatnot is just being made much stronger than it really is.
Well, America's a big country, so both things can be true. You can be left alone and no one would bother you in one place, and you would definitely attract attention in another.
Right.
That's just the nature of this country.
So the fact that as a Jewish person, for the first time, and listen, I've lived in some rough neighborhoods. I lived across the street from the Hells Angels in the East Village in the 80s, that was called the War Zone. Yeah, I lived on East A Street between C and D.
I know exactly where that is.
Right behind Tompkins Square Park, where there was gang wars and all kinds of crazy stuff. And then I've been in Oakland and all kinds of really inner city places. And and I held my own, and I feel afraid to be a Jew in America. It's like unbelievable. And I talk to my friends in America too, and they're, my sister, who's not religious at all, she won't put her mezuzah on her door.
This is an important point you're bringing up. It's actually my last question. Basically, I was going to ask you specifically, speaking of myself as an American secular Jew, I am sensitive to human rights issues in Gaza, but we often hear that we can't really know what's happening because we don't live in Israel, which is also true. But whether you're a Jewish person who's religious or not, what happens in Israel affects Jews around the world. That's my question. Is part of the discussion in Israel how the government's actions are perceived around the world and the dangers of isolating itself? Are Israelis concerned about that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, I first of all, I can't speak for all Israelis.
Sure.
I can say, look, it's like this. Again, it's
losing America's military assistance. That's in a discussion. That's a political discussion right now. And if Biden loses, that, Trump is actually quite a big supporter of Israel. So it's hard to say exactly what would happen. But that's part of the discussion. On the left, they would like to cut off aid to Israel starting today.
Look, I would say, and this could open up a whole nother can of worms, but I'll go there anyway, is that Trump is a big supporter of Trump. That's the bottom line.
That's a good point.
He is a big supporter of himself, and he will
do
whatever
it takes advantageous to him.
Yeah. So there's that. I mean, the fact, again, not to go into whatever too much, but under the Obama administration, Israel got the largest financial aid, military aid ever. But in regards to your question, as far as whether we're getting support from America or not, it's and also as far as Bibi and his whole whatever, the reality is we're tired of being killed. That's the thing. We are tired of being killed. We're tired of being targeted year after year. I mean, before October 7th, still everyone in the South, for years now, since Gaza and before Gaza, you had the Intifada, where buses were blowing up in Jerusalem and whatnot. It's enough already. And so it's like, what are you going to do? I mean, look, I personally, if they would listen to me, I would say drop, millions of pounds of marijuana over everybody, or, tabs of ecstasy or mushrooms or something, right? And just, if everyone's stoned, maybe they just won't have the energy to fight anymore. I don't know.
But that's the tragedy of the peace concert that got attacked on October 7th, is that, apparently that doesn't work. You can't just drop weed.
No, the wrong people were taking the drugs.
No.
You got to get the Hamas to take the drugs. No, but so that's the thing. It's like, and where does it end? I don't know. Look, as a non-sect,
I do think it's important just to note that I don't think it ends with children being killed, residential areas being completely depopulated and leveled, and then the horrifying possibility that that's actually the goal, is to reclaim the land and resettle it. And I don't see a good end for Israel if that's what the government is trying to do, depopulate Gaza.
So for what I've heard is
there
is no desire to repopulate it, to have it go back to Jewish Israelis. I have not heard that. I've heard that's not the desire. But, again, what are you going to do when you have the hospitals and the schools that are actually the bases for Hamas?
Right. No, I understand
that. What do you do when you have them with children around,
right.
that they're the defense is the children. And again, like every single you said what needs to be brought up more, every single conversation, we can start every conversation with, saying about the terrible destruction that's going on in Gaza and the children that are being affected, whether it's, they're, God forbid, being killed, or they're starving, or they're cold, or they're wet. But at least let's hear about the hostages.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
You know,
you
like,
don't.
okay,
I don't know what, like, it's almost like you don't really hear about it. And I don't
you
know
don't
the
hear about it.
numbers. I don't know who the families are. Well, here in America, I should say.
Yeah,
I
you
agree
don't.
with you. There isn't that side isn't being brought up. And I don't even know what the status is.
One of my closest friends, she was the teacher of 3 hostages. You know, it's like everyone knows families. Everybody in Israel knows families who have family that are hostages. Everybody. And yeah, could you imagine what's it like if one white rich kid is a hostage in America? The whole country, it's like 24-hour news, and on and on and on about such a thing.
Yeah.
And yet we have this whole thing, and every conversation, whether people are pro-Palestinian or not, should start with that, because it's like, if you're not going to release the hostages, what's the point?
I get that, and I suspect that the answer is that that's their last card to play, and they're going to hold on to it for as long as they can. And they realize, I suppose, Hamas, that once you give up the hostages, what do you have left? And then
okay, that's Hamas. But what about the pundits that are on the media? Why aren't you hearing it from them? Why aren't you hearing from them say question. what the IDF is doing is horrific, but we'll admit that the Hamas needs to release the hostages.
I agree with you. There's not going to be much of a debate on that. I agree.
And what the only little bit of media attention was when it became a thing to tear down the posters of the hostages. Like, what was that about?
Yeah. Well, it's become a political issue. And all the sides around love an opportunity to turn any tragedy into a political opportunity. And I think, that's happened here in the United States. I suspect it's happening in Israel on both sides. And that's what makes the situation so complex. Zev, you've answered all my questions, and I really appreciate the time that you spent to explain what's going on.
My pleasure.
Yeah. What
I'd
you're
like
doing.
to end with one thing, if I may.
Yes,
one more,
of course.
One more
Please
point.
do.
Because I think it's really a very important issue. Again, I grew up, and I think it's very important for me to say this. I grew up in Cincinnati, which is the reform capital of the world. Okay. I still, and you can quote me on this, as embarrassing it might be, I still believe in Santa Claus, except for now I know he's Jewish. But I was raised in I didn't know what Shabbat was. I thought kosher meant pickles. My parents put on the best Christmas in the world. Both my parents are Jewish, but it was an American holiday.
How did you end up with the last name Padway, if I might ask?
Padway is from Padova, Italy. That my great-great-great-grandfather was the chief, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of years ago, was the chief rabbi of Padua, Italy. And they went from Italy to England, and it went from Padova to Padway.
Wow.
So
okay, that's fascinating. I've never heard a Jewish name with that, with that.
It's not. I'm the only Padway in the world. Really,
that's
like
amazing.
any Padway is related to me. That's it. There's some Padways in Milwaukee. That's where my father's from that are related. My grandfather was I don't know if you know the labor law, the Wagner Act. That was like in I don't remember what. In the early 1900s, that allowed people to strike and unionize. My grandfather was the one that argued that before the Supreme Court.
Oh, wow.
And he was a U.S. State senator in
You're talking about that
Wisconsin.
time in American history where we were as close to becoming a socialist country as we ever were. This is the labor rights movement.
Yeah, that was my grandfather was one of the leaders of that. Wow. And my father.
Did I cut you off because you said?
So I just want to give a little bit of my own roots of like I grew up very secular. I didn't grow up religious. I grew up in my father was in World War II in Korea. He was a fighter pilot. My mother got jobs for lots of people, but I grew up completely secular. And the whole story of how I ended up where I am, that's a different for another time. But the bottom line for me that the solution to all of this, it's not a political solution. Because it can't be. It won't work. It just won't work. It's
does a religious solution work? Because that doesn't seem viable to me either.
Well, so I would say that yes, except for I would not use the word religious. I think that's a very triggering word for a lot of people. I do think it's a spiritual or a divine solution, because without throwing in religion, which comes with the laws and the rituals and the battles that go along with it, if we can accept that there is a higher power, as they say in the 12-step program, a divine entity that is permeating throughout the universe, right? That created the something that created the somethings, the creator of everything, that if that creator would simply reveal, remove the veil that says we're different, that I'm different and you're different, and this land is my land and this land is your land, and all that kind of stuff, then and that we all are realizing that we're one, then it would change a lot. If there was literally that whole consciousness of that. So as a Jew, right, what percentage, this whole thing is about the Jews. What percentage of the world is Jewish?
Oh, it's like less than 2%, if that.
It's less than 1%.
It's less than 1%,
right?
Yeah.
Less than 1% of the whole world is Jewish. And what size is Israel?
Oh, it's about geographically the size of New Jersey. I don't think it's much bigger than that. Yeah.
And the whole world's crazy about it. And how many Arab countries are there surrounding us that want us dead, that take up so much space, and how many hundreds of millions? And we have this little place that's the size of New Jersey, if that. And yet the whole world is crazy about and we don't even have oil. We have olive oil. It's pretty good. And I heard olive oil is going up, but we don't even have the oil. Yeah. What resources do we have that are so valuable? What, the Temple Mount, this one little dome of the rock thing? Right?
Well, it's
so
very
there's
symbolic.
something.
I mean, the city of Jerusalem is extremely symbolic, and then the old city is divided into 4 quarters, and that's where the 3 major faiths all, coalesce in one place.
So if we accept that that's the case, then and Jeffrey, I'm speaking to you as a Jew, right? That we make up this little teeny speck, and yet the whole world is crazy about us. Maybe there is something to it. If you look at every religion, and just to throw this in there real quick for your next, if you ever want to do this podcast.
Sure.
Before, from secular Jew to Hasidic Jew, I was a gutter punk. I was a squatter in the East Village. Uh-huh. I had Liberty Spikes. I hitchhiked all over the country. I became a Hare Krishna. I had my own ashram. I worshipped idols, right? I went through a lot of, to get to where I am now was quite a bit.
But are you re-arguing for the world that we're the chosen people? Because I don't think that's a winning argument on the geopolitical.
No, not in the least bit. First of all, we are chosen, as every indigenous tribe is chosen for something, right? It doesn't mean, it's like if you go to your temple, right? Is the rabbi more important than the congregation? No, he's there to serve the congregation. So if anything, the Jews are here to serve everyone else. We're not here to lead everyone else. We're not here to rule over anyone else. We're here to serve as much as every other tribe, every other indigenous people should be to serve. But what I am here to say is that the things that if you look at every religion, the Hindu religion, the Christian religion, the Muslim religion, the Jewish religion is the only religion in the world that claims, if you accept the claim of everyone, all the religions, we're the only ones that claim that the entire nation experienced this revelation at Mount Sinai, right? The Christians who you had Jesus had 12 apostles. You had, Muhammad. How many followers did Muhammad have when he was alive? The Krishna. Most people didn't know Krishna was God. In the Battle of Kurukshetra and the Bhagavad Gita, only a handful. Buddha, only a few Buddhists, people knew that Buddha was anything. Judaism is the only religion where, and Jews are so stubborn, and I'll say it, no problem, stereotypically, they're so stubborn about details and everything. If anyone would have, here's the Torah, here, all of a sudden, here's the Torah. We were all there, the sea split, everything. There's plenty of Jews back then that would have said, that's bullshit. My grandfather would have told me that never happened. We're not talking about that long ago. There's Torahs here in Tzfat. I own a Torah that's 250 years old. There's a Torah in a synagogue that's literally 5-minute walk from where I'm standing right now, maybe less, that's 850 years old. If you took the Torah that's 850 years old and you compared it to a Torah that's in the West Side, Lower West Side, in a lesbian synagogue, run by a transgendered rabbi, that Torah and the one that's 850 years old is exactly the same. Every letter is exactly the same, right? How is that? If you take the Torah that was from Yemen, where the Yemenites had no connection with anybody for 1,000 years, and you take their Torah and this Torah, every letter is the same, right? So it's like we have this gift and this ability to be able to do mitzvahs, giving charity, keeping Shabbat, especially nowadays with the phone where you're plugged in 24 hours a day, and environmentally speaking, to not drive, to only talk to people that you actually can look in their eyes, to only go to a place that you can walk. Environmentally speaking, humanitarian speaking, Shabbat makes more sense now than it ever did in the past, right? And so that every action that we do as a Jew, and you know what? I have friends, I used to do sweat lodges with the Lakota, with, the things that the Lakota do and the things that the Tibetan monks do also are valid and also are important, but I'm not a Tibetan monk. I'm a Jew. Somehow, some way, God made me a Jew. And so
you're definitely selling me on the merits of Shabbat, and I don't doubt that for a second. I think, though, that part of the conversation still has to be, how do we address these issues when, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know what the percentage is in Israel, but in the United States, most American Jews are not religious. They're not keeping Shabbat. They don't keep kosher. They're not reading the Torah. So
that's what I think needs to be talked about more.
Okay.
Getting
back to the roots, you're saying that it's the solution, for lack of a better term, is back in the essence of Judaism.
Yeah. There's nothing that makes a Jew more of a Jew than hate. I don't know if you follow my Instagram.
That's very interesting. What do you mean by that?
I do recommend following my Facebook, my Instagram. Though
okay. Tell us that. We'll make sure I get that on there.
Elements Cafe Tzfat. And Tzfat is spelled Tzfat, so it's Elements Cafe Tzfat. Also, there probably is some links there that if you want to donate to help feed people, we're more than happy to take everyone's money.
Could you shoot me the links? Yeah, after the fact in WhatsApp, and then I'll put them on the website.
Fantastic. So, 3-4 days ago, it just happened, and the whole way it happened was really by divine providence. That I ran into Michael Rappaport right outside my cafe.
You're talking about the comedian from the United States?
The comedian. He's an actor. He's been in 100 movies.
Yeah.
And he's in that Netflix series called Atypical about an autistic kid. He plays the father. Great guy, right? Okay. The guy was the most secular whatever Jew you can imagine, right? And he's never been to Israel before. Never been to Israel. He's a grown man, never been to Israel. In December, he came for the first time. He went straight to down to where the tragedy happened to do a tour of everything, right? He's now been to Israel 3 times since December. 3 times he's come, right? And all he's posting now on his social media is about what's going on. And you see him putting on tefillin, and you see him, he was in, there's these he did this video that was really cool. It's probably 30 seconds from where I'm standing right now is a place called Leave Note to Believe a Note. It's a place where they take college students and stuff and get them to do volunteering. Right now they're in the South helping rebuild homes. And at their campus, they excavated they have underneath the campus a whole tunnel system, not for killing people, but with mikvahs, places for bathing and little marketplaces and stores. It's a whole underground like city underneath. And so he was down in there and he's like, what do you think? You guys think that the Jews came here in 1948? And I think he has this like series called something like The Shit Michael Rappaport Never Knew. Like, he's like, I didn't know. I thought the Jews came to Israel in 1948. Look, we're down here. This was like how many thousand? This is like 2,000 years ago. They were living down in here, and so because of what happened, he is inspired now to come to Israel, over and over again. He's posting constantly. He's learning about his Judaism, right? So
and that's common. That's common, I think, right? When a lot of people,
I think it's very common,
right?
And I can say that even for myself, when I was a secular person growing up, that if someone, I'll give you an example. Actually, I was living in Denver, and I worked for this company called VU Videos, and Tony Robbins was my client. I used to do all Tony Robbins's tapes, and I worked for a company that did the tape duplication and packaging. So I was the sales rep. I sold Tony Robbins. I had High Times was my client. The Iditarod race was my client. And when I worked there, I was clean shaven, right? No, like a modern short haircut. I wore a 3-piece suit, everything, right? Rosh Hashanah came and I took off. And then there's like the days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And I didn't wear a yarmulke when I went to work. But I decided after Rosh Hashanah, I got a little inspired. I was with my Rabbi Twersky in Denver. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to wear a yarmulke. So I wore one of the ones, a clip-on, like, the little ones that are like tight, and you clip it on. So I wore that.
Like you get at a bar mitzvah or something.
Yeah. So no, not even those are like the little flimsy ones. This one's like whatever it is. Okay. So I'm wearing it, and people are like, Hitler wasn't such a bad guy. It's like, what are you talking about, right?
Just because you're wearing a yarmulke, now everybody is giving you their.
Or someone said to me, hey, somebody stole your Mickey Mouse ears. Where are your Mickey Mouse ears? And then my manager called me in and he said, hey, I know you had Jewish holidays now, but what's the plan? How much longer are you planning on wearing that thing? I said, why? Is it a problem? No, it's not a problem. I'm just curious. I said, I'm probably going to be wearing it a lot more. Why? By the time I left that job, okay, and I was one of the top salesmen there, by the way. By the time I left it, I was wearing a black velvet yarmulke, wearing a black hat and a black suit, and I grew my beard. That was what made me start looking more religious. Is the more they started putting the pressure on me, right? What makes a diamond is the pressure on the coal. It was like, all right, yeah, let me be a Jew. You wanna say that I'm a Jew? You're right. Let me put it in your face.
Right.
And
you embraced it.
Yeah, I embraced it. So how many more people? There's so many people now making Aliyah. It's crazy. It's a war zone, right? They're firing rockets. They're killing us. And yet now more people are wanting to make Aliyah, to move to Israel. First of all, they don't feel safe, in France and all these places. And so you have more of them coming here. And yeah, so in one sense, that's the hate fuels us being Jewish. But
I understand.
I really feel like,
unfortunately, that argument is made on both sides as well, is that, these kind of events create more animosity towards Israel and towards Jews and creates, you're radicalizing young people and all this kind of stuff.
Look, and another thing I think it's really important to know, and anyone who comes to Israel, I really invite anyone to come to Israel, come to Tzfat, come to Elements Cafe, but go to Birthright, tagli birthright.com and get a free ticket, whatever it is. One of the things that is unbelievable to me that every day I see in America, someone who's in the military, stereotypically, you have a military mentality type person. They're like the jocks in the high school, you know? Sure. It's like the hoo-ah, and like they're tough. They're people will say, they're like rednecks, like, whatever. Like,
I
there's
work
all
with
the
lots
stereotypes.
of active duty military where I teach. We're a big military city. There's a big Air Force base here and all of that. Yeah, I have those young people in my classes all the time. Right,
and it's a certain cut of person in general. What to speak of then? There's probably a lot of poor minorities that do it for financial aid and whatnot. Is probably a big thing in Israel. I can't even tell you. I called to renew my car insurance. Okay, and it happens to be that my car insurance guy that I've been working with for 10 years is the commander of the paratroopers. Okay. Right? My accountant, I called my accountant. He's, also this guy. The guy who I buy produce from every single day is one of the hardest workers in Tzfat. He's at his little fruit, not little, but he's got a fruit and vegetable stand 30 seconds from here, Yoram. He's there, 18 hours a day. He drives the trucks that drive the tanks. Like he drives these huge trucks. It's like all the people that make up the infrastructure, these are the soldiers. And most of them.
But not the Orthodox.
No, aren't they exempt?
Aren't they exempt from military service?
No, not at all. This is another.
I thought there was a big controversy about.
It's a big misconception.
Okay, clear that up.
And we'll go there. But I want to finish. I want to finish this one point, because I'm going every week, driving up to the borders. I'm driving to Kiryat Shmona. I'm like, last week I was literally a 5-minute drive from Lebanon. That's how close to the border. With rockets, like, coming in, right? And I'm driving with like 150, 200 burritos to bringing. These are all 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kids who are the sweetest guys you'd ever meet. They're the guys that you hang out on the beach with. They're the guys that they don't want to hurt anyone. They don't want to fight with anyone. This is what is making up basically the entire IDF, is teenage kids who just want to live their lives. They just want to go to school, or they want to go hang out on the beach, or go hiking or swimming or surfing or whatever, or just working, their job. They don't have hate in their hearts. They don't want to kill people. They're not excited. Not only that, but in our town, everyone's got guns. That's another incredible point in Israel. Everyone's got guns. I mean, I can't get a gun for the life of me. And I was trained in Berkeley. I owned a gun in Berkeley, California. I owned a .45 Smith & Wesson. I was trained by the firearms instructor of the Richmond Police SWAT team. Okay, where I used to go to the firing range with them. In Israel, I can't own a gun because I didn't serve in the military and my Hebrew's not great enough. But if you're in the military, whatever, you see people, I see teenagers, I see religious people with AK-47s everywhere. How many school shootings has been in Israel? In the 12, 13 years I've lived here, I have never heard of one school shooting. Not one. I've never heard of one person being held up by gunpoint. And literally, I can walk outside my cafe right now and see a guy with side locks and a beard, walking to synagogue with a machine gun strapped on his back. I guarantee it. There's no school shootings. All right. So what about the religious and the army? Okay.
Yeah.
So,
right. I think the common conception is that the Orthodox are not required to do military service in Israel, which is compulsory for all other citizens.
Right. So that is completely false. Okay. In general, everyone, when they turn 18, even before they turn 18, there's a pre thing. Then when they turn 18, there's different things one can do. So one is, if you don't want to be a soldier, there's also what's called, I think it's called Shirut Lumi, something like this, where it's like community service, right? One could, instead of being a soldier, they can do community service, which could be anything from helping the elderly to disabled people to cooking to, there's unlimited amount of social services. And a lot of times it's women that decide to do that, but they don't have to, okay? Now, there are people who when they turn 18, and it's primarily in the quote unquote ultra Orthodox, which goes into yeshiva, right? Which is really could be compared to like becoming a priest, like going into a seminary for women or whatever.
Convent.
Yeah, something like this, where it's not a convent, but where they're going to learn religious studies full time, right?
Okay.
So there are people who can get if they're going, and they're going to be going where they're going to be studying full time, like literally 12 hours a day, they're studying to be a rabbi or something like this. Usually they will become a rabbi, but it's not only that they're going to become a rabbi, it's like this is going to be their full-time life, is learning, is studying Torah and learning, and
is it also
helping the community.
Is it also a misconception that they're subsidized by the state to do that study?
No, they are. They are subsidized. They are these yeshivas, not 100%, but the yeshivas, and then they have what's called koels, which is once someone gets married and they have kids, if someone wants to learn full time, they can get paid to learn full time. So, first of all, the percentage of people that actually do this is such a small fraction, right? It makes up literally like percents in the single digits. Okay. That's number one. Number two, if you would ask most soldiers that are like commanders, they don't want these guys. They don't want them. They don't. Not because these guys, again, not to be stereotypical.
They've spent their entire childhood in shul or something studying at a book.
Exactly.
As opposed
to. You, I hate to say it, but you see them in the mikvah. The sun has not touched their skin ever. Ever. Right. They're as white and pale. They don't do sports. They don't do nothing. They sit and they learn.
What's
from
the
morning
word in Yiddish?
till
Is it
night.
In Yiddish, I think it's a nebish. Is that the right word? And like
what,
a scholarly
nebish?
Nebish?
No, that's something else. I mean, it's a Talmud Chacham. These guys are brilliant. They're actually. I mean, look, there's a family that lives right around the corner from my cafe. Okay, the 11-year-old, the 12-year-old can read a book in like an hour, in 2 hours. They're geniuses. Their minds are like phenomenal, right? And this is what they're doing. They're learning nonstop. So you have that. But that being said, there are thousands. And I can send you plenty of pictures. When I go deliver the meals, most of the guys that I see have payas and tzitzits and everything that are in the army. There are, especially in the last 10 years or so, there are hundreds of thousands of religious, Orthodox, Hasidic soldiers.
As well, are there also, because I just don't know the answer to these questions, but there are also Arab-Israeli soldiers in the IDF?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Of course. And Druzis.
And they could be Christian, they could be Muslim, they could be Druze.
Of course.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, plenty.
Ethiopian.
beyond.
Yeah.
Thousands.
Right.
There's nobody looks at this. The again, it's all media and the publicity and everything. The amount of people that are not serving because of this religiosity thing is such a small amount, and it's also like they're like full-time college students, in other words, Right. It's and that have scholarships. That's kind of what it is.
So it's almost like similar to what happened in the United States during the Vietnam War. College students could get an exemption.
You can get an exemption. And there's plenty of secular people that get exemptions too, for mental health, for physical issues, for all kinds of, there's plenty of ways that a non-religious secular person can get an exemption from the Army.
Interesting.
Plenty.
Yeah. You cleared up another misconception.
There's plenty, and we don't have sex through holes in the sheets.
Yeah.
Let's throw that out there.
Well, do you all carry diamonds in your pockets?
Yes, that is true.
That is true. Okay.
That is true, and we do control the media.
I figured as much.
And that's why the media loves us so much. That's
right. All the conspiracies are being revealed here today on Sans Apologia. And then, of course, also, the IDF is famous for its Jewish space lasers.
Listen, if you as a Jew get depressed about the situation, the best thing to do is to read the anti-Semitic news, and it'll make you feel better, because it talks about how the Jews have all the money and they're running everything, and they're,
Somehow I escaped those stereotypes, and my parents were not wealthy. My father is not a lawyer, a doctor. We didn't grow up anything like that. But that's the nature of stereotypes, I suppose. And Zev, I can't thank you enough, because you've cleared up a lot of interesting misconceptions. You provided a ton of great information. I'm going to make sure that the links to the Elements Cafe are posted on the website. I really appreciate the time that you've spent, and if any time in the future, maybe we'll get a chance to talk again. Who knows? I would love to visit Israel and see
come visit
your city. It would be fantastic.
You got a great radio voice.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate. I'm working on it. I mean, we haven't dethroned Joe Rogan yet, but I'm coming for him. So we'll see what happens.
Get Sean Hannity on.
Oh, Lord of mercy. He's not coming on here. You don't want to handle these kind of questions. No.
I actually gave him a panoramic, huge coffee table book on Israel. I don't know, must have been 20 years ago. I met him and gave him this beautiful book on Israel.
I'm sure he loves it, and I don't doubt his support for the state of Israel. I just can't see eye to eye on his ideology.
No, he's a nutcase. He's a complete fanatic nutcase.
There are other topics for other episodes in the future, of course, but what a great opportunity to speak with someone right there in Israel, and I really appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks again. Yeah.
It's your only good news. All the best.
And that's all I hope for as well. Peace for everybody involved. The people deserve it. Yeah. Thanks again for listening to another episode of Sans Apologia.